I don't know. I don't even know what my question is, but like, how do you?
I know what you're saying.
We're getting to that point.
Yeah.
That's the Vic. I don't know. That's
the real pod experience.
Yeah, I love it.
Sees it, feels it, runs inside the 10, down to the 5.
Toward the Harvard sideline, he's across the 30 to the 40.
He's able to fend off the defender and bring in the game's first touchdown.
Yeah, so what is that podcast called?
It's called like Momentum.
I was really nervous about meeting you. And I didn't become like not nervous until I figured out that you're 24 years old.
Because I'm younger or older than you expected?
I really thought you were much older. Do you get that a lot? Like, I feel like you've mature, like you give off just straight mature vibes. Like things are like together. And do you feel that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean,
I didn't realize you were 24.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's
like,
awesome though. I think it's really cool.
That's super. Like,
too, April 30th.
I saw that. April 30th. I'm March 1st. And
17.
wait. Yeah, I'm older than you. Sheesh. It's been a long week. But no, that's like, I don't know, so happy that you're on, and like I'm glad that we're just gonna have a fluid conversation. But I'm not gonna lie, like I was until we started talking too a little bit, I was just really, really nervous about talking with you.
Well, I'm a big loser, so there's nothing to be
I don't know. I'm probably a bigger loser than you. And Mo's the biggest of us.
People say that though, that I have like, I always seem, I get this a lot from people on Instagram, is I'm always seem happy and I'm so positive, and I constantly have to tell people, I'm a human. Like I have bad days, I have bad moods, like I break down over, XYZ, but yeah, I've gotten that I'm mature, and I frequently get that I'm always happy, which to me is like the weirdest thing to receive because I don't feel that way.
I mean, it can kind of look like that,
Yeah.
Just definitely from the outside looking in. I mean, I haven't like followed you too closely, and quite honestly, like my girlfriend has like briefed me on a lot about you, so it's really cool now to meet you. But yeah, just from like what I hear, it's like, I mean, it's always like giving advice, and it's always like showing who you are. And sometimes, that comes like from a position of like almost power and stuff. And I think we look at that as like someone that has it put together and that's happy, that's content with where they are in life.
For sure. I would say that I am constantly learning and constantly growing and constantly struggling. So something about my platform that I like to keep real, for lack of a better term, right? Yeah. Everything I post is try to be real, is that I don't have all the answers, and I don't ever want to be an account that seems like answer driven, because there's like motivational speakers who you follow. Like I've never seen Tony Robbins cry. Like Tony Robbins always seems like he's on his game.
Yeah,
I don't ever want to put that out into the world because it's not the truth. Yeah. Like literally, I think it was yesterday I posted about the doctor. This is a long story I won't have to get into, but basically a doctor told me to like adjust my diet a little bit, and I got like really triggered, and I started to cry, and I like freaked out, and I posted all about that because I wanted people to know that even though I come off like, hey, this is how I have a healthy relationship with food, this is how I do XYZ, or as a female athlete, that one call from the doctor and one comment, I started crying and my whole day was ruined. Like I'm not better than anyone. So I try to incorporate that often because I don't ever want to seem like a preacher, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, of course.
I was listening to that podcast actually when you told the story. And it really moved me just because you were so open and, for lack of a better term, real pod.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is like, where does that courage come from to be so open and confident within perceived insecurities that other people would have and wouldn't be willing to share?
Well, a lot of it I track back to being an athlete at SC. I feel like, and you guys probably relate, just having been, all of you, like collegiate athletes, elite athletes, especially at like prestigious, whether it's a prestigious sports school, prestigious academic school, both, that people look at you like, oh, you go to this school and you're an athlete, like you must live the life and things must be awesome and you should be great. And my freshman year at SC was really hard. Like it was the irony of I'm a walk-on, I'm playing, we're the number one team in the country and number one seed in the tournament, and I'm so nervous to play that I can't even go to bed at night and my eyes are watering before the game. And so going through that and feeling like, holy shit, there's this whole side of sports that no one's talking about. Like I had to go through that. Then I got depressed. Then I went to see a sports psych at the health center. And then when I started to realize, oh oh my gosh, like this is what happened to me. This happens to a lot of athletes. Why is no one talking about this? Yeah. Then the side of me that's like, yeah, put together, aggressive, passionate was like, something needs to change. And I was a journalism major and I love storytelling. So that's why I wanted to kind of share what I'd been through, almost out of like for the sake of comforting some athlete somewhere else who was also feeling less than or feeling insecure, or feeling like an imposter. So it was less about, I wasn't even thinking about what other people would think of me. I was just thinking of the person who would Google depressed athlete and then like find my TED Talk, because when I Googled depressed athlete, I didn't find much.
Wow.
Yeah, we got to slice that apart though.
Yeah, there's a lot. So it seems like it started with performance anxiety. Is that accurate? And that's what you just recorded now with a specialist in that field, right?
It started with performance anxiety, and my mentor from SC, who's an alum and an Olympian from the volleyball program, we just did an episode on performance anxiety, because I feel like so many athletes are like, I love my sport, I've been playing it forever, I'm really good at it, like I'm playing at Harvard, I'm playing at SC, but for some reason I can't figure out how to make it happen on the field, on the court. Like I don't know what's wrong with me. And that's kind of what happened to me. It was the overthinking, the fear of getting benched, the fear of making a mistake. And then you have that athlete mentality of like, well, you're supposed to be like on one of the best teams in the country and you're a starter and you're supposed to be good, and like the best don't rest and don't make excuses. Yeah. Don't be soft. Those are the things we hear. And so that was like a double whammy of like, well, I don't feel like I'm supposed to have these emotions, so I'm going to pretend I'm not having them. And then suppressing that led to even a darker place.
So I actually had an experience with performance anxiety. And I'm curious, as you hear this, for me, it was high school, like I felt it a little bit, but it wasn't until college, and it wasn't until I grad transferred to Vandy, and then I got the Chiefs. Like, as the levels started to rise, my performance anxiety started to exacerbate. And for me, it was, and I hope that I'm saying this right, for me, it was before the game, like, I couldn't eat, and I would throw up before almost every game. Is that something that you experience, or was it like a game thing, or was it just the sport itself, like practice or anything like that?
Well, first of all, I mean, thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
And those are definitely symptoms of anxiety,
right.
And I think everyone's symptoms are different. Mine was definitely all around playing the sport. I think It was like the pressure of, we're undefeated, 22-0. The national player of the year is my teammate. Like, it was just never wanting to make a mistake or do anything wrong. And it was very volleyball centric. I know there's people who have social anxiety, they have test anxiety. Mine was, now I struggle with some social anxiety, but I feel like we all might, coming out of literally living under a rock. COVID. But yeah, it was very much tied to how I'm playing on the court. And I think you guys know, as college athletes, like every single day you're statted. It's like you go from the bliss of playing as a high school athlete and like you're the best in your town and like everyone, whatever. And then you go to school and it's like every time you touch the ball, someone's making a tick and it's good or bad. Oh, and then there's someone in front of you and someone behind you and someone recruited to replace you. And we're comparing the numbers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what fueled it a lot.
Yeah. So, like, given that's what it is at the D1 level, like, what would you suggest to someone going through it who's maybe battling, like, an imposter syndrome or this performance anxiety? Like, what are, like, some tidbits that someone could take and then improve that situation?
So I'll actually have some good answers for you guys, because I'm coming off of a recording with a two-time Olympian, future sports psychologist. She's mentored by, I don't know if you guys know Dr. Mike Gervais, but one of the best.
He does a lot of Elite 11 stuff.
Yeah, that's her mentor. She's his mentee. She's brilliant, and she was an Olympian, so she's done it all. And a few things she shared with me today that were really powerful are, the first thing is anxiety is very future oriented, sometimes past, but it's most of the time what's going to happen. Am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to lose? Like, your mind is not in the now, it's in the future. And so to kind of quell anxiety, you want to get back to the present moment. You want to get in the now. And the more that you try to get away from your anxiety and you don't want to feel it and you're like, oh my God, stop, this needs to go away, the more you fuel it. But if you just take that deep breath and you experience it, it'll start to quiet. And so a big thing we talked about today was how like presence is one of the antidotes to anxiety. And then secondly, and this is something I loved, is getting really clear on like who you are. What is your purpose for doing anything? Like, what is your purpose for playing football? What's your purpose for doing whatever it is in your life? Getting super clear on your philosophy so that in a moment where you feel threatened, in a moment where you're like, oh my God, what if I make a mistake? What if I get pulled? What if everyone laughs at me? You can call on who you are at your core, like your root core belief. And I think that's super powerful to know. And that's like inner work that people have to do off the court, off the field, so that in those intense moments, they're like, wait, I got my own back.
Is that last part?
I'm sorry, bro. That was really deep. Like, hold on. Can we at some point we're gonna have to lighten the mood, but like my chest was like pumping right there. Like I had flashbacks, so I was a punt returner. I'm lightening up the mood. I'm sorry. I have to. It's too much for me.
Sorry,
right
this
now.
is my flaw. I have to go deep. I can't have a surface level
I know.
conversation.
But like I'm taken back to like when I was at Vandy and I was catching a punt against like one of my first punts against like Georgia, and I'm sitting back there, I'm waiting for the punt, and like what you said, like I'm literally worried about dropping in front of all these freaking fans. Like that's what I was worried. I was like, I just can't drop the ball. Funny enough, after the third game, I saw a sports psychologist, and kind of going back to what you said about being present is something that she told me at the time was like, really just focus on just doing something you've always done. You know, instead of worrying about like, I need to catch this ball or like I need to score this touchdown. Let's like break it down to like the most basic level thing, which is like seeing the ball off the foot. And then once you see the ball off the foot, like your body just, since you've done it so much, will just naturally carry you to do everything else. And then then the next focus is just catching the ball. You know, either doing one of the two, but like not worrying about like scoring a touchdown, not worrying about like everything else in the stadium, and also just smiling back there is something that she told me.
Gratitude is one of the ways to get back into the present moment, is to look around and say how grateful I am to be playing in front of these people.
That makes more sense.
I'm on this stage.
Yeah.
Like I said, presence is one of the antidotes to anxiety. So is gratitude. So is joy. You know, those emotions can really center you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I had to say something, but also I had to like cut it real quick because I'm like, dude, my chest was honestly like pumping right there. I was like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah.
I felt like I was like back into a stadium.
No,
like,
I remember
like going
that
through
Georgia
it.
game actually that
Yeah.
you mentioned with the punt returning.
Yeah.
So like, were you in your head? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's kind of, I'm in my head, like I'm seeing everything around me. I'm just like, whew, this is too much. Instead of like the gratitude aspect of it.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like that trigger though? Like for me, playing as like goalkeeper, when like, you know, they're down the field and they're starting to run, like I feel the anxiety because it's like it goes through all of them. It can't go by me, you know? So it's like for me, I'm always like shoulders back, head up, like I make this motion where I'm just like stand still, and I immediately like triggers in me, like kind of shuts everything off. Like, do you guys have like a trigger point where you're like, okay, take a breath, like get ready for the ball to be served? Like, do you guys have like a moment? Because I feel like otherwise if my thoughts kind of just start to flood in my head, unless I'm just like, okay, go now.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten anxiety like playing quarterback, definitely like, you know, big games in the SEC and all that, and then now I'm here at USC. But what's helped me a lot is self-talk. And so I just have to remind myself like how good I am and convince myself of that, because I just get in my head about it, and I'll just find things like, oh, I had a bad practice on Tuesday, like I don't deserve to be here. And it'll be like, I guess, a little bit of imposter syndrome, like why me starting in the SEC or, you know, here in the Pac-12. So I'll just like a recurring theme just in my head, you know, like I'm the best, or like, you know, something like that, like a little phrase.
That's great. And to go on another tangent here where I feel like I'm just quoting the best in the field, but I'm obsessed with like absorbing knowledge from the greats. And I feel like nowadays we live in a society where experts are putting their wisdom online for free. And so something Dr. Mike Gervais talks about is like confidence comes from self-talk. And people will say like, oh, confidence comes from like past experience. Confidence comes from XYZ. And he's adamant about your inner dialogue. Yeah. And so like, yeah, let's say we've all had a good game before, but that doesn't stop us from being anxious about the next game if we're saying, well, what if that game was a fluke? What if I mess up this one? So I think that's a great point. And I similarly had games at SC where I literally was like, I'm the shit, I'm the shit, I'm the shit, I'm the shit. And I just said over and over. So another thought couldn't creep in. You have to get cocky with yourself too.
Have to. Yeah.
And then there's a thought comes in, it's like, you're not that good. I'm like, I'm the shit, I'm the shit.
And I feel like you have to just throw great things out there in the universe, like just real positive things. And that's something that I don't want to keep going back to my sports psychology, but that's something that she said too. It's like just, the gratitude is one aspect, but it's just the fact that you're just being positive around you. Now, quite honestly, like I think it's just a great life thing, right? It's just being really positive. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, okay, so something you said earlier resonated with me as well. It's like having an identity outside of sports, because, if I have a bad day on the football field and my identity is all tied within football, then sure, I'm going to feel shitty about myself because that's my entire life. And we were talking about this with Max, your boyfriend, of course. And so, everything was going well for him. And then, the story better than anyone, but, he ends up getting benched, I think after a Stanford game or something like that. And, as a prize recruit, and you work your entire life for something, and then you just see it crash. But then he was able to find, solace in like relationships with you, family, and like extracurriculars. So I think that's really important too. And I see a lot of my teammates and student athletes around the country, right? But like their identity is literally solely tied to this one thing. And that's something I learned the hard way.
And if your identity is tied to your sport, and if we like really think about that, that's like every time I go back to serve, my life is on the line.
Yeah.
Of course I'm anxious. Like if your identity is your sport, how could you even, that's like, that to me is like an image of like your family being held at gunpoint and they're like, if you don't win, everyone dies. Like that's what we're thinking when we're super tied to our sport. And so when, I think like, especially like sports culture sets us up to kind of like mentally fail. And I guess it's harsh, but like think about it this way. Sports culture is like, oh, you can't have a plan B. It's not if we win, it's when we win. Like there's all these things they tell you so that, for example, someone like Max feels like he's accepting loss if he fathoms a lifestyle without sport. Like I actually think I play better when I accept that hey, if I were to get benched, my life would go on and I'd be happy one day. Cool. Now I can actually play free because I'm like, I will survive the worst case scenario. Yeah. So when athletes have like no plan B, it's when we win, I'm like, you're just putting more weight on your own back.
Yeah. And oftentimes you figure that out too late. So for me, it's injury, and most people it is injury because you're sidelined. And then right now, my ACL, but even before then. So that's how I started this organization, like this truck that we're in where we distribute food. That's how I found interest outside of football, met people outside of the sport itself. But I think, hopefully if you're watching this message and like, hopefully it's before a traumatic event like that, you can find that identity. I think it helps a lot. I don't know if you've had an experience like that, but.
For me, I don't want to say I epitomized that, but while I was with the Chiefs, I also had a chance to go back to Goldman.
Yeah.
And so like as every day I went out there, I was like, all right, like if my time here is up, like I have a pretty good job that everyone else wants on the other side. But at the same time, I think that also does like play into like how I approach things. Like there is one aspect of it being free, but there's also like, like guys that are growing up in, middle of Louisiana and New Orleans out in the hood, like
that's all they have.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so like the hunger and the bite is not as strong when, you have something kind of like you can fall back on sometimes, at least in my opinion. That's kind of my experience.
Well, that's the coach's perspective too, right? And so like they're that old school mentality that's like, if you're not all in on football or volleyball or whatever sport, then the guy who is going to take your spot and then put more time in and be better.
Right. And to your point, like, I think that's a great point. Everyone has different situations, and that might be their only way out, or that might be what they want to give back to their family.
Yeah.
I think, too, just that perspective of like, okay, I'm still going to be loved if this doesn't work out. Because with anxiety, I think our mind can be so catastrophic that like we truly think our world's going to end. And then when we dissect, like, what does world ending mean? Like, are there other paths to greatness? Are there other ways to do X, Y, Z? But it's deep stuff. And I don't think it's being encouraged for athletes to talk about. I mean, even you guys mentioned, like, you haven't had a girl on the podcast, but also, like, we talked kind of before we started about how what I talk about is a little bit deeper. And I just think it's still kind of taboo. And, like, when I go talk to schools and I talk to male athletes, I know in the beginning they're like, who's this chick? Like, she doesn't know what the grind is. Like,
they don't even,
So I know that I'm walking in like with low points. Like I got to earn respect. But I mean, just that's why like in that situation, I'll bring in a video of like a Kobe Bryant, or I'll start quoting some dudes, because I'm like, this is my only way through is, hey, Michael Phelps goes to a therapist. So it's not just me, like this is the GOAT. But I think it's so important because there's so much more opportunity. And Max and I talk about this all the time. Like there's so many guys that don't make it in football, so many, but a lots of those guys, like they don't apply those same skills that they had that made them awesome at football to the next thing. Now I'm just like ranting, but I think athletes are special breed is what I'm saying. Yeah. And I think they have potential on and off whatever the court is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's nice to hear that. And I think why a lot of athletes fail is they just don't hear that from someone that they at least respect. You know, maybe that they're not hearing that from their coaches because the coaches have ulterior motives. But I know I completely agree with that. And I wish a lot of athletes had like a foundation strong enough where like family is like, you know, always in the ear about that. Not like, hey, like I hear like, especially when, I mean, it was for you, like when you're growing up, it's like, oh, this kid's in like in the 6th grade, like this guy's going to be, you know, the next whatever, like the biggest thing. And there's nothing else like tied to that. It's all like what he's going to be in. So that's kind of like what frames that kid's mind for the rest of his life. Yeah.
I'm curious, like, so you've been, you know, in this awareness kind of field for some time now. Like, what do you think the answer is on this level, on like a university level? Like if you were an athletic director, like a head coach or some sort of supervisor, like what kind of systems might you implement to aid this?
There's so many things. If we zone out to like a high level, there's many schools, unlike, I'll use an SC because I don't know what the accessibility or resources are at Harvard, but like
Terrible.
Terrible. Oh gosh. It's because USC rolls out the red carpet in all aspects. And so you need a sports psychologist. They have one of the best in the country. Like you need a psychiatrist. That's where I got my meds. So they roll out the red carpet. So one big issue is there's so many athletes that they're like, okay, I'm struggling. I'm going to ask for help, which is the big hard thing to do. And then on the other side of that ask, they're like, well, we can't see you for 4 weeks. That's one whole problem is like, we need some regulation and some order so that you can't have many athletes and teams if you can't properly give the support to them. And then secondly, I would just say like at a zone in on like each university level, I think it's the coaches. You know, they're at the top of the pyramid. They decide who's playing. Like we seek their validation in so many ways. And I think it's really curriculum and programming for coaches to starting these conversations, validating the issues, because as Justice just said, that's going to trickle down to the players. Like if you know, like something Max always said is like, he started seeing a psychologist his sophomore year, but he didn't tell anyone because he was like, well, what am I going to tell coach? You have 2 quarterbacks and one of them seeing a psychologist. Like maybe he's going to think I'm less than, which sucks. So having the coaches talk about it is huge.
Yeah. No, coach is definitely going to see that. And like NFL scouts too. Like you're not taking a guy. You're not taking a guy like that.
I mean, you could, but it depends on the coach, right? Like a new generation, like a McVay or them, I can see them. No? Is it still?
No, dude.
I don't know.
You're not taking that bet.
Yeah.
Especially like first round, like, hey, like this guy might struggle, like he might not be fully there for practices, and you know, there might be times where he's just checked out. No. You're not taking that.
After your TED Talk, was there any like drastic change within the athletic department, or was there a shift of like athletes being like, oh yeah, I want to do this, or did anybody within the university be like, did you guys see this TED Talk? Like maybe we should switch on or do more? Like, did your TED Talk impact the university's awareness, I guess? Or,
well,
like helping students?
So definitely a lot of my teammates and student athletes were more open, and I knew that also prior, which is why I wanted to do it, is I was like, I felt comfortable in knowing there's so many people that need this message.
For sure.
I'll say like USC did so much to support amplifying my voice. Like, I mean, they allowed me to do a Players Tribune video when I was in school. They signed off on me letting the Players Tribune to come in and work with teammates. Like, so they did a lot. I mean, I delivered that TED Talk and it was fine. So they did a lot to support me, which was great. And I think in general, so many schools and the conversation of mental health has made such a big jump in such a small amount of time. But at the end of the day, I always think like there's people that want the change, then there's people that are resistant or old fashioned or whatnot.
Honestly scared. I know a lot of people who are like just like scared to like they were saying to like seek help to go and do that.
For sure. And I think that's the role that your podcast and platform serves as well. I see on my Instagram feed all the time people like tagging you, citing you with their photos and like, thanks to Victoria, like, you know, I'm not, you know, ashamed of my body, like all these kinds of things that people are more willing to be, I guess, themselves because of you. And I don't know if that would have been the case without your platform and the things you've saying. So like I've seen it firsthand. I'm literally scrolling on my feed and like you're everywhere. So I think it's really cool. Yeah.
Thanks. That's the hope, is that people feel confident in being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think to piggyback on that, or dovetail as we use in the finance world, that was supposed to be funny. Wasn't that funny?
It's not funny.
I'm like,
What was that joke for, bro?
we're not
It's for
registered
me.
I don't think anyone on our demo is gonna
Not on that plane, no.
All right, to dovetail what Mo just said, it seems like men are really hard to break through, and I'm curious, like, do you have a lot of men that reach out to you, or is that, you know, is that there, or?
Well, it's my absolute favorite when dudes reach out.
Mhm.
I don't want to, like, I will like to say I treat everyone the same, but every once in a while, if I do come across a DM from like a football player at a D3 or like a baseball player at a whatever school, I will be like, here's my cell. Let's talk. Because I know how hard it is for them to even send that and to talk about it, that I'm like, let's talk about this. And there's so many times, like, to tell you guys a cool story that hits. I spoke at a school and I played this clip of Kobe Bryant, and Kobe came to USC, and I had a really cool opportunity to ask him a question. And I was grateful to continue, you know, talking with him afterwards. But on the stage that day, I asked him about mental health. And this was last year, a week after the accident. Everyone's wearing Kobe jerseys. It was hard for me to even want to speak, because actually it was like the day after, if I'm jogging my memory now. Anyways, I played this video of Kobe, and Kobe was essentially saying, like, Mamba mentality is about recognizing weakness or recognizing something that needs attention and putting the time in there. And if that's mental health, like, let's walk hand in hand with it.
Yeah.
Let's address it. It's not a bad thing or something to be ashamed about. And this football player came up to me afterwards, you know, wearing his jersey, and he was just like, almost in tears, like, Kobe's been my inspiration to suppress my depression, my anxiety. And like, just seeing him say, oh, I'm not any less Mamba, I'm not any less tough, gritty, like, just like how freeing this kid felt. Yeah. And so, you know, and just going back to guys in general, there is this societal pressure to be masculine, to be tough, to not cry, to not be weak, to not be soft, even though I'm a mental health advocate and I talk about this all the time. And Max is really vulnerable and transparent. Like, and he came on my podcast and he almost cried. But I still even see it in him, like, you know, this need to be optimistic or whatever it is. And I just think it is harder for guys. It is, because of that. Men are tough, you know, men are strong. So it's hard.
Yeah. No, it's really difficult.
Yeah,
Sure.
I've never heard of that Mamba mentality quote. I think that's really cool.
I'll send you guys the video. It's powerful.
Please do. It reminds me of the Naomi Osaka deal right now, which I'm sure you know all about. I don't know if you've seen that, but you know, like, the #2 tennis player in the world, she just withdrew from the French Open. And it's this kind of polarizing thing, where there's the debate, like, should you do the press conference, or should mental health be prioritized, right? But I think it's really cool, like, the stand she's making, and I think it's drawn a lot of attention to the cause. But I was just curious what you thought about it.
Yeah, it's definitely brought the attention, which is great. And I think we've seen lots of athletes talking about their personal experience, which is awesome. You have Kevin Love comes out and expresses his performance anxiety and his depression and his suicidal thoughts. You have DeMar DeRozan. You have Simone Biles, Ellie Raisman. You have all those athletes. And I think Naomi's situation and that controversy has called on all the athletes in between, like the Steph Curry, the Kyrie Irving, the people who don't necessarily have a story or they haven't shared one, but they're coming in just like, hey, we see you, Naomi, like respect, and we're on your side. I think that's big because it's the first time we've seen like the athletic community rally behind someone's mental health struggles.
That's huge. That was deep.
Yeah.
like that.
Again, like we're at a level right now. Maybe that's just like do you like just go over like friend's house and you just make it super deep? Like
No, I don't. And we can be.
And like what's the Victoria Garrick outside of all this? Like what do you do? There has to be
I promise I'm not always deep and dark, and I honestly I prefer mental health conversations not to be deep and dark. Like I just think we should be able to talk about them and like. It doesn't have to be deep and scary, but maybe because it's so unusual for you guys, it is seeming deep and scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I
like outside of social outside of social media, like just daily life, what do you love to do?
That might help her answer this.
Like what she loves to eat.
No, I wanted to ask her about the
everything.
A restaurant.
I wanted to ask her about the story that Max was telling us when he first met Victoria. Remember that?
Yeah, I want to hear this one.
Because I think you responded. I think I put it on my story or something. You were like, "Oh, this story's way longer than it actually, or than he actually."
The first date story.
Yes, that was
Wait,
part
I remember.
of it.
Was it the first date? No, it was something else.
You can. It's the next tab if you want to play like a minute of it or something.
Oh wow, we're pulling out the roll the tape.
Yeah, we.
Chess is out.
You could play.
My girlfriend's a big Warriors fan, so that was
wow.
like the summer ice break, like the next summer, and I was like, I want to come over, and we chilled, and we've been dating ever since.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we summed up.
Okay, so he said he took you to Chipotle on the first date, and then I guess like your first time hanging out, you guys watched like the O.J. Simpson doc.
Yeah.
So number one, I just want to know, what are you thinking when you go to Chipotle on the first date? Because
okay, I know, right? It's bad. To give him some credit, it was one of those things where we had like been flirting and knew each other for like a year, and then we finally had the OJ hangout and then like hung out for the next 6 days in a row. And then it was like one of the nights, it happened to be 5. We were both hungry. We were like, let's get dinner. So it was super casual. Like I had been there since noon and we like just went to get dinner. So it wasn't like he said, hey, do you want to go on a date with me? Dress up. I'll pick you up at 8 and take you to Chipotle. Like I would have been like, no. But so then we like rolled over into Chipotle. That's why it was our first date. And then in terms of everything else, I mean, I don't know. It's like such a long story, but now I'm thinking about what you just said and my seriousness. I think when I do talk about mental health, I definitely
go into a mode.
I do.
Yeah.
Because
Trust me.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
Because I get super passionate about it, but yeah.
No, I completely understand it. I think my girlfriend calls me out. Like when I start talking like Wall Street and I start talking about like, I don't know, the markets, geopolitics and stuff, like I go in, like, you know, you want to talk China, you want to talk Russia, like any news that come out, like I go in. So I can totally like see where you're coming from. It's just like, I mean, it's great. Like, it's so great. But like,
speaking of the dude thing, like we're talking about mental health and you guys are guys and you guys host this show. Like, I'm sure this is out of the ordinary for your conversations here.
Oh, completely.
Which that plus my intensity is a lot.
No, it's great. We need it.
I'm learning a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the first things I was going to say is like, just school me. Like, just like,
educate me.
Like, educate me. Like, that's like how I feel, at least. And it looks like,
I want to ask you, is this the first time you've talked about what you've been through, or is that something that people like know? Like, will people listen to this and be like, whoa, Justice, I had no idea?
At least on the show, yeah, for sure. But I've, partnered with, it's called My Huddle. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And former Harvard women's soccer player created it. And I've talked about it on there a little bit, and I've shared it with like my Vandy teammates, and it's funny. Like I'll have some people come up to me, and talk to me about it on the low, and don't really feel too comfortable sharing it with other people. But it's one of those barriers of seeing a psychiatrist or seeing a sports psychologist, and it's just a barrier that a lot of male athletes I feel like go through, especially in college, and especially when you're competing with other people that are right next to you. And like, I think it's different from the league. a little bit, because everyone's in the league and, the coaches aren't really going to have too much an influence. You're probably not going to be meeting with someone that's in the building. But in college, like, you're usually meeting with someone that's in the building, and I think that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's super cool because obviously you talking about it makes a big difference for guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like
Justice,
we're going.
Did you ever try to like talk to anyone at Harvard when you were there?
No, because I didn't really address it when I was at Harvard, and I should have, quite honestly. And it's funny, like, I feel like I would have been a much better player if I would have addressed it earlier. Like, if I would have addressed it in high school, like, I would have been a better player then. So it's, unfortunately, I didn't.
Did they have any like resources for you, or like did the team ever like bring it up or ever have talks?
No. I think that was one of those teams where it's like how you point out, it's like tough mentality, like let's be grinders, let's be gritty,
no excuses.
No excuses. Excuses are tools of incompetence. But like,
I went to a school, it was a Power 5, and like they had a big thing on the wall that was essentially like, don't make excuses. And I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
I was like, we need to rearrange this.
How do you feel about that? Because like,
about the no excuses.
Yeah, because you're kind of a no excuses type guy though.
I'm gonna
put you on blast.
So
like, we can't just be following the whole time.
I'm about the grind.
Yeah.
I think you if you want to be an elite athlete, you have to run when you don't want to run. You got to wake up when you don't want to wake up. Like that is not. I think there's mental toughness and there's mental health. They're different. I hate it when people who are clinically depressed are being told mental toughness, and then I also hate when people are just like, I don't feel like working hard. It's like, okay, you gotta be tough.
If you're not depressed, then you should push through it, right? It's like, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, so I'll get,
this is
sorry,
this
Justice.
is good education.
I gotta go deep now.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we define the two, mental health is a state of well-being. So it's like physical health. Like when you show up and you have your legs and you're walking, like you're physically healthy. It's a state. It's like the baseline.
Okay.
Mental toughness is an ability. It's like a skill you could train to push past adversity, challenge, with optimism and with courage. And so how do they relate? And this is a Mike Gervais quote once again is mental wellness is a state mental wellness is the state and mental toughness is the bridge to peak performance. So you need to be mentally well as like your baseline, and then mental toughness is how you build to a sustainable peak performance where like you're really the best, you're the greatest. But you can't sustain greatness if you're not well, and you also can't reach greatness if you're not tough.
Yeah.
But do you see how there's a difference? And so like if we look at mental injuries as physical injuries, if you have a tear your ACL, no one's like, Mo, shake it off, like sleep it off, we want you to practice tomorrow.
Yeah.
But when someone is depressed, which is a severe injury, they're told sleep it off, come to practice tomorrow. So I just think we need to identify the two. And like if a coach thinks his athlete's not trying hard, can he just call him in and be like, yo, how are things at home? How are things in your life? Like, are you struggling? Do you need me to help you meet the psychologist? Or are you just not trying hard today? And then they know, and then if they say they're not trying hard, then scream at them, get them on the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, it gets kind of blurry though, I feel like. Because like there's that famous Muhammad Ali quote where it's like, I hated every second of training. And so like how do you view that? Like some parts of training are inherently miserable, right? Like a really hard conditioning session or something like that. So like I don't know. I don't even know what my question is, but like how do you?
I know what you're saying.
We're getting to that point.
Yeah.
That's the Vic. I don't know. That's
the real pod experience.
Yeah, I love it.
I know. I totally get what you're saying, and I think even like Kobe has some quotes that are, wild quotes about work ethic.
Training sessions.
And I do think every person knows their limit. Hopefully, like if you have the awareness, like I know when I'm in the gym and I'm like, I have more in me. And I know when I'm like, shit, I've been on E for the past hour, I have nothing. Like, I think in your heart of hearts if you can go one more. Yeah. And actually, one of my favorite quotes from Kobe's novel that came out, Geese Are Never Swans, is sometimes it takes more strength to hold back than it does to push. And that's such an underrated sentence in sports. It's always like push, 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 push. Do you know how much harder it is for an athlete to say, I don't have it in me right now? It's so much harder to admit that you need rest and recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to pick your battles when you say that one.
Well, Kobe's the poster child of it. And so for him to say that, I think it's very powerful. And I don't even know if that's advertised enough because I had no idea about that. Did you?
No.
Because, like, I always hear the crazy stories, like, you know, dribbling till 4 a.m. You hear it
after a
everywhere.
game.
Yeah, that's his thing. That's his shtick. And so I had no idea.
Some people are built different. Like,
That
Kobe
too.
might be able
Built
to.
different.
Kobe might, not that you're not, but
Def built different.
Kobe, like, even when you look at, like, The Last Dance in Jordan, he, like, lived and breathed greatness. He was always in flow state. Like, that's just different. Like, for me to even touch that level would take a lifetime of effort and energy. So I do think, like, that's why I'm saying everyone's different. And sometimes you need to know, like, my freshman year at SC, I was like, I got to outwork everyone. I got to outwork everyone in my position. If she stays, I'm staying. If she does more, I'm doing more. That just drove me crazy. I got such bad performance anxiety. I was playing when I wasn't able to play. And then my senior year, I was a starter. And girls were saying I should do extra reps. And I was sat there. I was like, you know what? I gave 100% in practice. I feel good about what I did. I think it's best for me to roll out, go home, eat my dinner, go to bed at 9. And you can keep doing reps if that's best for you. I just think we compete too much with the competition, and then we don't pay attention to what is going to actually be optimal for us sometimes.
So I guess it's about knowing, like, discovering within yourself. And maybe that's a difficult process, but, like, what's enough and, like, what your body and mental health needs.
Yeah, it's trial and error. And that's what I was talking about earlier today is, like, it's trial and error. Like, how does your playlist work for you? You know, what time do you arrive? When do you wake up in the morning? What do you eat pre-game? Like, I think those are all things we play with. Similarly, like, if we try to eat everything Jordan eats before a game, like, that's not going to make us play like Jordan, you know? So I think it is individual. And I think people need to check inwards and figure out, like, what's optimal for them. That's the hope. You know, maybe there's people that can't tap into what's best for them, but.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's the mental health aspect. And I know you do a ton of work with, and you've talked a lot as well about your eating disorders of the past and how you've dealt with that and how you're helping people. Maybe if you can just give, like, a brief outline to the audience with what kind of work you're doing along those lines.
For sure. I struggled with body image issues kind of my whole life, but especially becoming a female athlete, it was, you know, magnified. And speaking of, like, the male-female thing and also just any people in general, I do think this is another issue where even more so men are out of the conversation. And I actually connected with a football player from SC who I knew during my time there. I won't name this person or give any details, but, you know, talked to me about some of the body image issues he faced. And I was just blown away because even you look at guys and you're like, oh, they're not thinking about it. But I had friends who played, like, I had a friend who played at Washington, and he used to have, like, have to eat however many burritos to keep on weight.
To gain weight.
Yes.
That's me.
Yeah, and it's tough. It, like, messes with your head. You hate burritos?
No. Burritos are actually pretty good.
But
just
okay,
the eating wise.
So on that track, I'm curious with how you work between this balance of, like, for my sport, I need to be this kind of, like, weight or size or strength, and okay, this is too much. You know, I'm dealing with these issues mentally because of it. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, if I'm an offensive lineman and I weigh 200 pounds, that's not gonna work, right? Yeah. For myself at quarterback, you know, the idea is to gain enough weight such that I can sustain, like, a hit.
Yeah.
So I'm yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that is really relevant in sports. And just to remind everyone, I'm speaking from experience, not an expert, but from my experience and the conversations I've had and the experts I have spoken with, there are certain sports, like take crew, for example, where if you're a coxswain, like, you do have to be under a certain amount of weight. There are sports, you know, wrestling, you have to be in a weight class. And I think if that's your sport, then let's pursue that with a professional who can help us, you know, at the school, or a nutritionist, dietitian, who can help you get to that goal in a way that doesn't ruin your mental health. The, like, right hook on that, though, is I could never do a sport like that. It would mess me up too bad. I could never be a coxswain. I could never have weekly weigh-ins. I would have to walk away from that sport. And that sucks. And that's tough. I would ask people though, like, if you're really like withering away mentally, emotionally, and it's not healthy for you, maybe that isn't the dream anymore. Maybe that's not what's best for you. And that hurts. And I don't know everyone's situation, but I would say, you know, there's the obvious is, okay, let's pursue it in a way that is healthy and monitored and with the expertise of a professional. And hey, like, if this is giving me hell every day of my life, maybe I shouldn't keep playing this sport because my mental health needs to come first. Similar to Naomi, who like put her mental health first in that situation. But it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. Is that something that happens in volleyball, the same with football?
Fortunately, no. Fortunately, we don't. I mean, at least on my team, we didn't have to get weighed in. You know, there's not really a body type. I mean, you obviously want to be tall and you want to jump high.
Yeah.
But all the bodies were different, even in the same positions. I have, of course, encountered teams where like they are being weighed in. Coaches want their players to look a certain way. You know, that's just like toxic.
Yeah.
So it depends. But in general, the sport of volleyball, I'd say height and hops are the two criteria.
Yeah.
You got hops?
No.
Max does though.
Does he?
Does he? He's a hooper.
You heard his NBA comparison.
Markieff Morris.
Come on, bro.
Oh, you know.
No, I played libero, so I was just defense.
Oh,
Glued to the
yeah,
floor.
so you're glued to the floor.
Oh, okay.
But Max can jump.
Yeah.
Max can jump.
That's
And he
interesting.
That was so
Anything
crazy.
shit.
I think I was talking to my mom or something about this last week about you coming on. I was like, can you even imagine if I walked into the weight room with my soccer girls and the trainer came and pinched my hip? Like, can you even imagine? Like, I can't. Like, if like the local, we had fat camp for the men's lacrosse team at Harvard. They like. If,
Oh yeah, they did.
you know,
have
that was brutal. It's like they had to have a
Really?
certain
They low-key
percentage of
loved it,
body.
though.
Well, they were
Why?
told they had to have a certain percentage of body weight, like between this range, and like if they didn't, or like, they'd have to keep doing.
Was it body fat percentage?
Yeah.
I think it was
fat.
I think
body
it might
fat
have been body fat
percentage.
percentage.
Yeah, and so it was just blew my mind. I think we've talked about it in the past with like teammates. I was like, can you even imagine
Gosh,
if a
that's
coach came and pinched my
horrible.
hip or pinched my like thigh or what? I'd be like, I'm stammered because I don't even know what I would do.
That's
'cause-
horrible. And like
but
people
the
can't.
standard is so different like, between
yeah.
guys and girls. I feel like in that respect.
And you can't spot weight loss. Like you can't be like, oh, I have an extra amount of fat on my outer thigh. Like, how do I get that to go away? Like that doesn't work. But and then it's like, gosh, I can come back for a whole episode on diet culture. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just it's too much. It's too much to dive. It's a lot to dive into. But like, yeah, that's unrealistic.
I actually had a question following that. Is like, how do you think we should look at changing like the narrative around, I guess, body image and culture with like men versus women or like male versus female sports? Because I know that like because we don't have that test sometimes, like because we didn't have like those fat pinch tests or however you measure that for the girls, it was like, you know, people would see things or like people would hint at things. They're like, oh, maybe she looks a little unhealthy or she, you know, looks or whatever. And like people would be talking about it rather than addressing these issues. Whereas like guys just go head on their sports. They're like, oh, okay, you're in a different, you know, weight class. Or like you need to go up, you need to go down. They're more direct. Like, how do you think like we can have a better narrative of like bridging those gaps between those drastic changes, I guess, between the two?
I would just try to get away from how you look being the determinant of how you play, because so often it's just not the case. I mean, how often do you see someone and you're like, oh, like I could take you, and then they school you? You know, it's like,
Not
I just
often.
think you can't look at someone and assume how. Justice, I can tell if Justice hates me or really likes me.
Honestly, not often. I'm thinking pick up basketball. Like honestly, like dude
Body.
looks like I was like I got you, bro. Now you keep going. Nick. I keep going. I'm
just
just
totally
kidding.
undermined her point.
I know.
No,
I'm just kidding.
that was
I'm just
great.
kidding.
That's
I
what
was
I'm
kidding.
saying. Is like you can't. I don't think you should ever look at someone and assume their health. Just bottom line. That's my thought. And I hope that we don't do that. I hope coaches. That's the thing is some people will be like, oh, I was first in my fitness test, but my coach told me to lose weight. It's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Like you beat your entire team, but they just said you don't look the part. I mean, that's where it's like, you know, outdated ways of boxing the ideal body type, quote unquote.
What's the quarterback for the Patriots?
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. Have you ever seen Mac Jones?
Mm-mm.
Like, dude looks like.
Could you pull up a photo? Okay.
Yeah, he looks like he just like got out the
So-
frat house at Ole Miss and just walked onto the field.
Well, now you're body shaming him.
I'm sorry. Like he just killed a bunch of beers or something. I don't know. But the dude, like you wouldn't think, but like it goes back to your point. It's like that your body like image, and I think sometimes like especially like when you're getting scouted in high school, like coaches are looking like, oh, that guy, I like the way his body's built, right? And so like that often plays into the recruiting process.
Go Mac Jones locker room. It'll come up.
Yeah, there's like a.
Wait, I feel bad. I don't want to look at this dude's body and like make comments.
Well,
No.
It
goes
to
to your
point
yeah.
where like guys who don't look
really
necessarily
good
the part.
and,
He's a really good football
he's
player.
freaking
He
great.
went 15th overall to the New England Patriots. Okay.
Well, I love that for him in the male body image community.
I don't know if you're gonna ask a question, but I honestly just want to know, like, what's your long-term goal? You know, like, you've done so much up until. Why are you smiling?
Because you're gonna like my answer. You're gonna be like not even shocked at what I say.
All right, what is it?
No, I'll let you finish your question.
All right, well, you've done so much up until this point. Like, that's kind of why I thought you were older. I was like, wow, she's like so successful at such like right now. But like, what's your goal? 24.
My answer's gonna be deep again. That's why I know.
Hit us. Let's go.
Oh, I'm fine with deep.
go,
We
dude.
just gotta like go in and out of deepness.
Okay.
I don't know.
Prepare
The work
for
week has been a lot. Yeah.
deepness. Okay. So, as an athlete, God, I'm feeling myself get into like my intense mode.
Let's do it.
As an athlete, I've had many goals, right? Like I want to go to USC. I want to be the libero. I want to win this. I want to do that.
Yeah.
Been so goal oriented, and I found that I was so about the win that I wasn't present at all for the process or what was happening. Like, how did you even get from point A to point B? Like, I wasn't living in the moment. I was just trying to check the boxes. And so in my life, in my career now, I genuinely mean this. I don't have a 5-year plan. My goal is that I wake up every day, I work hard, I honor whatever comes up for me in my life, and I do my best to serve the people who follow me. Like, and if I truly believe that if I do that today and I do that tomorrow and I do that the next day, that in 5 years I'll look back and I'll be somewhere cool. Another really awesome thing that I learned from someone once is like, sometimes if you set goals for yourself, you could be setting limits. Because right now I'm like if your goal was, oh, I want to get this time, like I want to run the mile in 6 minutes. What if you could run it in 5:50, but you're just trying to get 5:59? So you're not even pushing yourself to what you could do. And then you're closing doors subconsciously. Like in a career, if I was like, oh, I want to do a TV show, and then let's say a book opportunity came and I was like, no, screw the book. I want the show. It's like, I'd rather just be in a state of life where something happens and I'm like, ooh, does this interest me? Is this valuable? Do I feel passionate about it? And just kind of do it all day by day and then hopefully be somewhere cool. So that's my 5-year plan.
Wow. Also philosophical.
That was great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Why'd you think I was gonna react to that?
Well, just because I wasn't like, oh, my 5-year goal is XYZ. Like I was like, okay, so day by day.
Yeah. No,
Be
I love.
present mentality. I love that.
Yeah, no, I seriously love that.
It's
I think.
it's like you're not chasing any specific thing, but if you do the things well on a daily basis, then it'll come to you. Is that kind of?
Yeah, and it's been awesome. Like I feel like before the pandemic, I was in such a different place than I am now, career-wise. And the only reason that I've gotten to where I am leaving the pandemic is because I was like, sure, I'll get on TikTok. Sure, I'll do this. Sure, I'll blah, 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 blah. And then it's like all that opportunity and that exploring and that stepping outside of my comfort zone has brought me somewhere cool. And so that's why I want to keep doing that.
I know you were big before the pandemic, but do you feel like there was like a shift when like everyone was indoors? Like as a content creator, I feel like a lot of people like came on the scene that weren't necessarily before. Like you mentioned TikTok.
Yeah. Like, do you want like from a number standpoint or from like
Yeah, maybe like anecdotal or I don't know.
So this is crazy because I was talking about this with Max and I really try not to get caught up in like numbers.
You don't look at them?
I'm never going to have balloons with the amount of followers I have. That's just not going to be me because I want to humanize the number. Like I want to humanize it. But it is crazy sometimes like every day like something happens that I snapped out of it yesterday and like I entered the pandemic below 100K because I remember Max like getting me a bag of chips when I hit 100K.
When you hit 100?
Yeah, he gave me a bag of
love
munchies and a
Max.
balloon. He's like, here are your chips. I'm like, thank you. And then now it's like above the 300 mark and I'm on TikTok. And it's like that is wild to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have happened if I wasn't indoors just creating.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to be out now to like meet all those people.
Right.
Hopefully. Come say hi to me if you ever see me.
I feel like for you though, and I know we got to wrap up pretty soon, but I feel like for you, like you're just so willing to help, and you're willing to put yourself out there. You're willing to like put not necessarily put people in your circle, but like you just have open arms, right? Like hit me up on my cell phone if you're about that.
Yeah.
Like there has to be some burnout to that. Like I don't know. Do you ever feel like maybe it hasn't gotten to that point yet, but like do you ever feel like you're burning out? Because like so much of it is social media driven, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure. So 2 parts to this. The first thing I'll say is like I want everyone to succeed. Like that. If my job could be just
strong,
like getting people, and like when someone comes to me and is like, oh, it's almost too much. They're like, oh, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I'm like, let's get coffee. This is what you need to do. This is how you should do it. These are the dimensions you post, and this is how you build a brand. Like, I just want to help people to the point where like people don't even like want the help. Like, but I'm just like, I'm that kind of person. I've seen this quote where it's like, don't talk to me too much because like I'll convince you that you could do anything you want to do in life. Like that's how I feel. Like I just want people to fulfill their potentials. But then to your second point, yes, I get burnt out. I took like 2 months off of TikTok a few months ago. I just recently took a 5-week break from YouTube. Like I can really feel the burnout for sure. Another weird thing about my platforms is that they're my life. So if you guys posted tonight and said like, I was crying, XYZ happened, I'm sure all of your friends and family would text you and reach out. I'm posting everything all the time that sometimes I feel like, this is deep. Sometimes I feel like no one just says, hey Vic, how are you?
Vic, let me just stop you real quick.
Cry?
Let me just stop you real quick. Like look at my show notes that I wrote earlier today.
What'd you write?
Well, honestly, I wrote it while I was driving. Sorry for people. But the first thing I wrote was just like, I just want to know, like, how does she feel? Like, that's so, like honestly, like, I think that's so, like, real. Like, just how do you feel? Like, I don't know. That's what I wanted to ask you. That was the first thing I wanted to kick off with. But we didn't get to that. But that's so funny you said that.
We went straight into the hole.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. Thank you. That like hits me deep because even like my best friends who I know love me, but it's like you get desensitized. You just get desensitized to. I mean, I just went to a high school reunion type thing, and this dude I hadn't seen since Sadie's sophomore year was like, the new apartment with Max looks great. Saw you went to therapy on Monday. I'm like, dude, where do you live? What's your job? But he knows everything about me. He knows what I did on my coffee table yesterday because he follows me. And so it's cool, and I love to do it, and it feels authentic to me what I'm doing. But at the same time, I feel like people lose the sight of the fact that I'm a human and I'm not just this thing on the internet who's like there to just inspire and comfort. Yeah. And so sometimes it does like hurt my heart a little when like, I don't know. Yeah. People forget that.
Yeah. Well, even recently, right, with the story you were telling us with the doctor and that she was telling you about.
I actually had a few friends text me about that, to which I was like, oh my God.
That's nice.
Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not just interesting. It's a paradox, right? Because you're sharing everything, but then at the same time, it's
you're a character.
Almost distancing.
Well, it's like no one, but my best friends would say like, and I know they're the best friends ever, but they would be like, I don't feel like people ask someone how they're doing when they don't know. Yeah. Anyone can look at my Instagram today, see exactly what I did and how I'm feeling. So I do put myself in a position where like, what is someone supposed to ask me? But I will say there's a really weird element to my content being my life and my mental health, as opposed to like, I'm a fashion brand where like I only post about dresses. Like, yeah, then my friends would be like, how are you?
Yeah.
But yeah, another thing Max and I always talk about is like steamrolling achievements. Like you said before, you're so successful. Like Max and I actively try to like take a breather when something cool happens because my friends no one congratulates, no one because it's just something cool happened last week, and that's not to and not to try to sound conceited at all, but like I think in general, everyone, like if you do something cool in life, you want the next thing in life. So yeah, Thanks for asking me how I am.
Of course. I mean, I didn't really get to ask you, but that was what I was gonna kick off because I just you're kind of like a person, right? Like, I don't know. I felt like we should have just said, "How do you feel today?" But we didn't get to that.
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. I know we gotta wrap it up. You're also really you're full of a lot of quotes. Like you have low-key spit out like 20, 25 quotes that are like
straight bars
like
from the dome.
Bars just from the dome.
From
like,
the dome.
Yeah.
Like how? I'm here listening. Like dang.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like, I'm also very action oriented. So like if I'm depressed, I'm like, what is going on with me? How do I stop this feeling? What do I do next? If I'm anxious. So like that's one thing. And I love this about Max too. Like I couldn't be with someone who wasn't this way. But when people are just like, oh, my life is shitty. And they just like sit in the shitty and just complain. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Get a book.
You're always trying
do
to find
something.
a way to
talk
get
to
out.
someone. Yeah. So I'd say all my quotes come from like seeking out all the help. Like Nicole Davis. Sorry, this last thing I'll say. I know we need to end. But like Nicole Davis is a 2-time Olympic medalist, best in the world at her position. Just brilliant. She comes in to volunteer coach the volleyball team after freshman season. I'm like, holy shit, you're the GOAT. I'm like, can I take you to coffee? Can I meet you tomorrow early before practice? Can I drive you home? And I went out of my way to build a relationship with her. She mentored me. I had her to lean on. We are still friends. I'm going to go to her wedding. We hang out. It's been like 5 years. She comes on my show. I don't think she keeps in touch with anyone else from the team. Maybe like 1 or 2, but that's just the difference of, and that's not her seeing something in me. That's me seeing an opportunity and like charging at it and refusing to let it slip through my hands. Yeah. So I think with the book stuff and the quote stuff, like that's just me like researching and trying to learn things in life.
Very proactive.
Sheesh. Yeah. Like you said, bars off the head, man.
Well, I've learned a ton. I know Justice has.
Yeah.
Kat's a huge fan.
There's
It's
no way
awesome to have another girl on the pod. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
No
So that
offense,
was fun.
Mo, but there's no way I taught Harvard people anything. Let's be real.
Are you joking?
No, you definitely
We
taught me a
were
lot.
raving after you came and gave that talk.
Aww.
I know I said that to you after, but like, oh my gosh, we were talking about you for weeks.
That
like,
is so
many
sweet.
people afterwards would turn to each other like, I can't believe that she experienced this. Like I experienced this too. And then everyone was going, didn't we do it at a time where everybody at the university could see? We were like, why? We need everybody to see this. Like your stuff really hits.
That
so.
means the world, because I was freaking out in the hotel with my mom. I'm like, these girls are from Harvard. I'm like,
No,
what am I
you
gonna
were
say to
you
them?
were so confident.
They're gonna think I'm this
oh my
stupid girl with
gosh.
body image issues, and they're like becoming doctors.
No, so many jaws were dropped because you were just so raw, and I feel like that's
man.
what works with your platform though. Is like you hit exactly what people don't expect you to. You're like, whoa, I can't believe she shared that. That is so real. Like I feel that too, and it's very vulnerable because I know like a lot of the stuff that you've posted. Like, I mean, I've seen in a lot of people I've talked to are like, whoa, she's so brave to do that, but that makes me feel more comfortable to do it too. So like, your stuff hits for sure.
Thanks,
for
thanks.
sure.
I appreciate
so thanks
it.
for coming on.
And thank you guys. And
Yeah,
thanks. This
absolutely.
was like a really cool conversation. I love having deep talks. I think my pet peeve is like going on a podcast and they're like, how is the weather? And then like it's an hour and I leave and I'm like I learned stuff from you guys, Yeah.
Wow.
So thanks for having
Appreciate
me.
that. That makes me feel great about today.
All right. Thank you so much, Victoria, for coming. Had a really good time.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Momentum truck. Subscribe.
Lord.